There are two bead knitting techniques, one in which the beads are placed between the stitches and one where the beads are incorporated directly into the stitch. This video will show how to place the beads directly into the stitches and is called bead knitting. For bead knitting, the knit and purl stitches are used. The purl stitch is the normal purl stitch that you would use for most knitting projects. However, the knit stitch is a twisted knit stitch. Using a twisted knit stitch is necessary to tighten up your stitches a little bit so the beads stay on the stitches better. For demonstration purposes, I'm using a size 6 seed bead and sport weight yarn. However, most of my projects use size 11 seed beads and size 8 Perle Cotton. For bead knitting, beads are strung on the thread before starting the project. Most patterns will tell you how many beads to string. The beads can be all one color, or several different colors can be used to create patterns. This video will show just the technique of bead knitting with one color bead. In another video, I will show how to string different color beads to create patterns in the finished project. For your bead knit project, cast on the number of stitches as there are a number of beads in the row, plus 2 or 3 for each selvage edge. So for example, there are 11 beads in these rows. I cast on 15 stitches without beads. Normally in a project, you will purl one row without beads and then start knitting with beads. The steps for a knit stitch are: insert your right needle into the back leg of the next stitch. This is how your stitch will be twisted. Slide a bead up to within about a ½ inch of the needles. Swing it around from front to back, and with your finger push it through between the needles onto the stitch. Try to remember: in, up, around, through, and off. In, up, around, through, and off. Knit the last 2 stitches the selvage edge in twisted knitting. In bead knitting, you must also purl with beads. For this stitch, you use a normal purl stitch but just add a bead. The steps are: insert the needle into the front leg of the next stitch, slide a bead up to within about a ½ inch of your work. Swing it around from back to front, separate your needles a little, and with your thumb push the bead to the front. Try to remember: in, up, around, through, and off. In, up, around, through, and off. In, up, around, through, and off. Finish the row in the purl stitch. If you're binding off from a purl row, bind off without beads as you normally would bind off. If you're binding off from a knit row, bind off in twisted knitting as you did on a knit row, but without a bead. This completes the bead knitting demonstration.